Hey, hey, hey. Hey, everyone. It's nice to see you. Some good names appearing. Tom, Mehmet, Fanling, everybody. This is great. This is great. Okay, so basically today I have made a terrible promise to basically to show Nexel, who's joining us. Nexel's, do you want to say something about yourself? Like, I think you've got a reputation that yeah. Oh, sorry. Try now.
Can can you hear me now?
I think they should. It was a mistake on my end. Yep, you're
All
on.
right, so yeah, so I'm Nexel. You might know me as Nexel or Shobit. That's my real name. You might know me from Create E3 app. I was the main creator of it and early maintainer. But now I've kind of stepped away from it. Now I do mostly TypeScript and OCaml stuff. And yeah, I'm going to college soon.
OCaml is something I know nothing about. I've got no background in it at all.
It's pretty cool actually. It's like a functional language, but you still have some imperativeness to it, and it has a great type system. Far more superior than TypeScript.
Yeah, well, do you know that's actually I think that's not hard, right? Like I think TypeScript is amazing, particularly if you're coming from a JavaScript world, but maybe not so much if you're coming from a much more strongly typed language where you're taking some things for granted.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The coolest part of OCaml is like the inference. You don't even have to type function parameters. They also get inferred.
That does sound amazing, and that's one of the features that some of the other sort of type checking tools that are a bit interesting and cool at the moment implement. Like what is it? Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope is building something that does that. I think at the moment. Anyway, so I wanted to show Nexel around Nuxt. And basically, sort of, I don't think you've looked at the code base at all. I don't know, but
I've looked around a bit,
a little
but
bit.
I didn't really understand anything.
Okay, well, that's probably not a good sign from our point of view. Like, so and this is going to be this is a contributor who's got a lot of skill, but a completely different code base. So,
Yeah.
what does everything do? What can I explain or introduce or show around? I feel a little bit like I'm opening the door of my house and sort of giving somebody a
Um.
tour.
uh,
And we've redecorated this room over here, and we've put a lot of work into that. Um,
yeah. I would like to know how the type generation of the API routes works.
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Okay. Great. So I think I'll give you a sort of really broad brush. Yeah, Nuxel, exactly. That is going to be your new identity. We'll give a bit of a
That
broad
sounds fun.
brush overview of the like what's going on in the repository, and then we can dive into that. So maybe start off with with sort of the type generation. Um, so for a start, you can ignore a lot of these files, which are chore files like how we generate the change log, and you know a lot of this is
Right.
irrelevant. The actual code all lives in packages. That's where it is. Everything else is something that lives around it. Now, when you first clone
Mhm.
the repository to start with, and this is actually a fresh clone that I have here, you're going to want to run build stub. And this is in the contribution documentation. So you'll install your dependencies, and then you'll run this build stub command. And what that will do, it uses this tool called unbuild. Actually, it uses pnpm to run the stub command in every the build command in every package. So the pre-packed script runs the build command and it passes the stub flag to it. And what that does is that actually makes a sort of fake build, which uses something called Jitty, which can run TypeScript. Sort of.
Is that from UnJS?
It is. So Jitty is, let's see, it is this repository here. Just paste that in the chat. And Jitty basically has the ability to run any code. So CJS, MJS, TypeScript, and you can use it basically like a synchronous require. So you just call the function and synchronously run any code. And it actually uses a hook uses Babel to do a transform of the source file when it runs it. But anyway, so what that does in the background is create these dist folders, and they have basically they just call in Jitty and run it on the source, and it means that we can basically act as though everything is built in terms of depending on dist folders, but we don't actually. But it's effectively a passive reload, so you can just edit a source file, and it just works immediately without having to run a build step. And yes, then we've got these 7 packages. So we've got the Nuxt, which is the CLI that most people will use for the first time when they type something like Nuxt init, like npx Nuxt init, or Nuxt dev, or something like that. And that's all compiled into a single JS file that has no dependencies at runtime. There's schema, which basically handles the Nuxt options and normalizing them. So doing things like, your root directory of your project should default to the current working directory of your CLI if you haven't passed one specifically. And this option needs to be an array. So if you haven't passed anything, then we'll make it an array. Otherwise, we'll merge what you've passed in with that. And so it uses an UnJS utility called untyped to do that. And so its output is both just types, but also a runtime validator and a schema loader, which is then used by other packages to validate those types. So it's both type level and also runtime. It actually also even outputs a markdown file, this config.md, which actually gets pulled in by our documentation. When we build our docs, we pull in
for like API reference and stuff.
Exactly. And so
That's pretty cool.
Lots of exciting stuff. Oh, Luke, sorry. Icon package extension. This is actually I have this now on my website. It is here. It's tomorrow operator mono tomorrow night, which I love, and that I think the icon package is there too. So anyway, so that's what the schema package does, and it also does things like generate the real defaults. So if in our config we have a default for something like we default it to false, then when we build this and generate the types for it, we actually have the default value in the real types. So what's this? View property structure. Let me hope this is going to work. Maybe app base URL is a better example. Yeah, app base URL. So if I were to go into a Nuxt config file and start typing that definition, I think I might actually need to reload the project because I've just built everything.
So like the default will be inside, like at the type level.
It will at the type level, like actually in the generated TS. I have no idea why this hasn't generated itself. Come on. Oh, it hasn't because I haven't run prepare on. So when you install the Nuxt project, you need to do this as well, and it actually runs by default the first time you install it, but you need to you need to run this Nuxt prepare command, which generates all the types in the TS config, which is the very question you were asking about. And that will then empower TypeScript to know everything that is going on here. So here, if we were typing app.baseURL, you'll actually see that the default value here is resolved at the type level in the js.comment to be the actual default value based on the schema. So that is quite fun. It means hopefully if we change the default value, it surfaces at the level where people are using it in their config
That's
file.
great. That's great.
And okay, so that's the schema. Kit is basically a library of utilities for module authors. It's like a Nuxt SDK. So they can do things like check the compatibility with a particular version. Like maybe they want to say that they only work with Nuxt above a certain version or something. And basically it handles all of that. And then there'll be lots of other things, like maybe you add a virtual file or a template or something. And this is meant to provide a consistent interpretation. So a module author can write their module for Nuxt 3.1, and then when Nuxt 4.0 comes out, it still works because they're using an SDK rather than sort of hooking into like raw internals.
Makes sense.
That's Kit. Then we have two builders, Vite and Webpack. Basically, you can create your own builders for Nuxt if you want to create a parcel builder or like any bundler. All you need is a module that outputs a bundle method. And these are two examples of builders. So they each output a bundle method which takes Nuxt and it basically is responsible for hooking into various internal bits of Nuxt to ensure that we get a build, either a dev server if you're running in dev mode or an actual output at the end of the day if you're running in build mode. So those are our integrations for if you want to use Vite, which is default,
I
or
had a
Webpack.
question. What is why does Nuxt support both Vite and Webpack?
That was originally because we were, Nuxt 2 was Webpack based. So initially we were thinking in the upgrade, hey, we migrate to Webpack 5. And so we did that. We were working on Nuxt 3. We was working with Webpack 5, which also has some features similar to Vite. For example, it has lazy compilation and a lot of very cool things. And by the way, RSPack is coming soon. There is an open PR from one of the RSPack team that implements like quite a lot of RSPack. So there are just a couple of features left to go. So watch that space. Absolutely. Yeah. Initially I put a very, very basic thing together. There's a branch up on the Nuxt repository. And then it was very, very basic. Don't get me wrong. And then I started chatting to Underfin, who has done great work in the Vue community as well. And before long, this was created. And honestly, it's been amazing to work with the RSPack team. They're great. And we are already quite far down the road. So feel free to check that out, try it out, look at the code. It's pretty cool. So yes, but you could create your own builder. And I think that was what we thought. We thought, oh, shall we pivot to Vite? Obviously, Vite's amazing, but what about enterprise clients or people who are already deep in the Webpack ecosystem? They have plugins that rely on it. We have modules that rely on Webpack, and so very much we wanted to ensure that they had a path forward. We thought we could make a generic implementation that would allow Webpack to keep working, would also allow Vite to work, and who knows what the future might hold. So, tying Nuxt 2 very deeply to Webpack was actually a really big problem for us because it meant that when Webpack 5 came out, which was a breaking change, we could not upgrade users without having a breaking change in Nuxt, and we were actually quite stuck. Nuxt 2 cannot upgrade to Webpack 5. It would break everybody who's on Nuxt 2, so it should be a major, but we already have a Nuxt 3. And so that's a problem. But we won't have the same problem with Nuxt 3, I hope. Because what it will mean is that we have this generic implementation. If anyone wants to build something new, they can distribute it separately. It doesn't have to be official. but yes, it actually, I mean, it set us back a bit in terms of time in building Nuxt 3, but I am absolutely glad we did it. Even though Vite is by far the most popular, like 90% of all Nuxt users, Nuxt 3 users use Vite, maybe more. Um, but the
Yeah, I've only ever used Beat.
yeah, Vite is amazing. Like Vite is lovely, but I mean Vite is also different in scope from Webpack. So Webpack is very it has a it has a runtime. I guess Vite has a small runtime as well. But Webpack has a whole thing, and so module federation, for example, is much more doable. Anyway, they're different beasts. They're not drop-in replacements. I have been interested to see, what about Parcel? Um, whether that might be something that would be interesting to implement. But honestly, I'm not quite sure I have the time to do that right now. I'm not sure it's top priority but I think it would be fun if somebody wanted to do that. Let's see. Question about setting up tests for Nuxt 3 with Pinia. Who knows if we're going to get to that, but ask it again in a moment, I think. Let's see. So anyway, so basically there's the Vite and Webpack, and then Nuxt is really the core of everything. So this is what sort of rules. So Nuxt, the CLI, sort of loads the configuration, and then it hands over to Nuxt. Nuxt loads all the modules. It adds any sort of core templates, composables, things like that. And then, as needed, it calls the bundle method that's provided by a builder. And so that's really where you would want to dive in if you're looking for like the hub of everything that happens. But sorry, you were asking about types and how we generate them. Have I given
Yeah,
sort of enough of the tour of the code base to
yeah.
to
I'm,
answer
I'm
that?
sure like I understand much more now, like where all the parts of where the different parts of Nuxt are.
Okay, but if you have any suggestions as well for changing or improving, please don't hesitate to say. But okay, so the way the type generation happens is we actually have this utility in the CLI called write types. And so the very first, well, I'll start from the what happens in terms of the implementation and then how it works. So what we ship by default two TS configs. We have one at the root level of a project, and then we have one in the server directory, which has a separate TS config, which is server scoped, because not all the auto imports that Nuxt supports, for example, will work in the server. Quite a lot of them won't, because they
Yeah,
rely on being running in a view context. So it's not that they don't work on the server versus the client; it's that they don't work outside of view. And so in a normal server route, which is very minimal and doesn't have view, it's not being rendered by view. So it doesn't have a lot of these things. And so these two TS configs are sort of the entry point. And we really encourage users not to configure them like within the file, but instead, if they need to, they can configure their TS config within their Nuxt config. And so anything that you stick in this bit of your config, but it like gets added to the generated TS config, and it means we also have a source of truth in terms of knowing what things should be. So if we were to open this generated TS config file, we should see the blah that I just added, which I think TypeScript will just
yeah,
ignore. But you also see the rest of the defaults. So obviously, restrict. There are probably some things we could change. We're going to get rid of the base URL, I think. We're going to change the module resolution to bundler. We already support it and, in fact, have a test suite that tests for it. But, it means that we have this sort of default TS config. And users can change this. They can actually, there's a hook that we call that lets them modify it. And we add all of the virtual files that and aliases that we have. Thank you, Henry. All the aliases that we add, we expose to TypeScript so it knows about them. And then we do some more things, basically all in this file. So we add another generated file into the TypeScript, which is this one. And it basically, we are able to pull in the types that we need from different packages, and also some more generated types that we create in the types folder here. So you'll see we've got lots. This whole .nuxt folder in Nuxt 2 was the build directory and had like the whole app. It was all generated there. In Nuxt 3 we have virtual file system, and so there's quite a lot of things in this directory as far as the bundler is concerned, but they're virtual. But these ones are written to disk because the IDE needs to know about them. So we've got lots of things in here. It's a lot of /refs. It is. You're right. And so these things do, they're not a lot. So this is a sort of default view shim, which actually, again, we should probably consider disabling by default. Thank you. We should probably consider disabling by default now that Volar has the capacity to do a lot more. But anyway, that exists. We augment our own internal schemas, for example. So if you add a Nuxt module to your project, you'll actually declare the types for that options. And
when I first used that feature of Nuxt, I was pretty surprised. Like I installed Uno CSS, and the types are there in the Nuxt config.
Yeah. So we don't do a lot here. It's not like we're listing them, but what we're doing is basically pulling the type of the module into the project context, because by default, which obviously TypeScript will include types in a project, but only if you use or import that file somewhere. And because when you add a Nuxt module, so if we were to add, say, Uno CSS, because you mentioned it, if we were to add that, and normally the way you enable a module in a Nuxt project, the way you enable a Nuxt module in a Nuxt project is you add it as a string to the modules array, which of course TypeScript doesn't understand anything about. It has no idea that that means it's now in context. And so we are able to tell TypeScript more, we're able to tell it that this actually is part of the context. And specifically, we can say that now this module has control of the Uno CSS key. Now, we don't have to do any more than that, other than basically point it to that module. So we do based on the exported type of the module, we set the options of the config key. So then we basically have access to this Uno CSS key, which should be fully typed as sort of the Uno CSS options.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, there we are. And we've got all of that there. There's more, obviously, that we generate as well. So we generate a type for the runtime configuration. So if you set runtime config in your app, this is something that's meant to be sort of environment variable type things. Thank you, Carlos. That's really kind. And also, welcome. Nice to see you. So we could do, I don't know, you could write some runtime config. And actually, that's now going to be in our schema, that we have this string, which is test. Now, we do actually generate this. This is not just TypeScript inferring it. We actually look at the type of the runtime config, and we are able to generate it. We're even able to do some clever stuff where we actually tell people how to override the value at runtime, like what the environment variable name is. And we do that with pure TypeScript. So we turn the config key into a string with some documentation. Probably we shouldn't. We should probably just write it as a comment in the. But like this is.
Yes.
I was rather proud of this, but again, it's the kind of thing where you're like, well, maybe it's actually not the best thing to do. But this is this is how it does it. It basically this is the type where basically this takes in any kind of object and hey Brazilian user, it takes in an object and it iterates over it and builds up this path to the key, and it splits it by case, just as the real runtime type does, and then uppercases it all and makes that the environment variable name. So anyway, I was proud of that. But
That's a
it's
crazy type.
I know. What is that? What is that doing? But so that does it basically. It's still the type is still the thing. So the type here is a string, but it just uses a brand to add the documentation. And Michael, thank you. So we generate that in here, and we also inject the runtime config to view a runtime. So then we also do a little bit more. So this file plugins actually takes any plugins, any sort of app injections that you create yourself, and tells your IDE that they exist. So if you had some kind of, we had this was much more common in Nuxt 2 than I think it is in Nuxt 3, because in Nuxt 3 things are much more composable. So the idea is if you have a module and you have features, you tend to expose them as utility functions that you can call, which means that it's not like there's a global registration of those utility features. Actually, it's based on usage. But in a Nuxt 2 context, these were often injected globally, which is generally speaking what I... Wilson, nice to see you. There was a time, like a period of a week, when every single day Wilson would have like a new PR for me in Nuxt, and it was amazing. It was truly incredible. So props to you. But basically, it's still possible to do this. So you can return like an object which has things like some kind of helper function. You might use this to create a global auth object or something like that. And then that is created. Now, all we do in here in this generated file is point to that function. Did we reload that? Or did I create the plugin? Did I create it in the right place? I think so. All we do, if it's not doing this right now, then that's probably an HMR issue. But but what we do is we generate an import statement like this, and we basically infer the return type of that plugin, and we then add it to the context like this. So the Nuxt app injections, this particular one, just adds root and router. But if we restart that dev server, we should see that it adds us our other plugin, which will mean that we now have access to this test utility. So in our app.view file, we would be able to do something like, I need to install Roller. We would be able to do something like this. All these injections are prefixed with a $sign, which is a sort of tradition from Vue 2 days particularly. Is it still loading? Oh, I'm not typing it in the template. I'm typing it in the script for some reason. So basically, we would have access to the type there. And so you can actually see that it's sort of inferred properly and works its way through. Let's see, what else do we have? And that's not just injected in the template. It is also available here. So you then get access to it there as well. We do have to ensure that we're careful about it. So for example, within here, obviously we can't augment the Nuxt app type with $test within the file that defines it. But we'd have a bit of a circular reference. But it is technically possible to do like this, or not in this file. But it is possible to use Nuxt app to pull in something that's been injected from another plugin. Okay, what else do we have? We have some Nitro-specific types, and you can see all of them here. And these are pulled in by this tsconfig type.server, which does exactly the same thing as the normal one, but all scoped to the server context. So it has the sort of the roots that exist within your Nitro server. So if you were to create, so we have this API test root here, which returns a string, and our Nitro roots just basically points the path, points that path to the API. It doesn't do anything more than that, but that then means we can hook into that augmented type and do things like await $fetch, and we can get type like autocomplete for that root. We can get like method support for it as well. So actually that one can take any method because it doesn't have any restriction. But if we made that, for example, a post request, so that's only going to respond to a post request. So if I hit it with a get, it should return a 404. But if I hit it with a post, it's going to return the hello. So now in here, it's only going to allow me to give it a post. Like it has to be a post request or it won't work. Reaper, nice to see you. And that's all powered by this Nitro roots. In this case, we're saying that this root only has a post handler, and it's this file. So everything just comes from that, and TypeScript is doing all the heavy lifting in terms of like what the return type of that function is. To
be honest, this is like my favorite feature in Nuxt, and I thought it was a lot more complex than this, but this seems like it's really simple.
It is really simple, but I think that's the right way. I mean, we've tried to make it simple because I think if the framework was doing all of the heavy lifting, like in terms of generating everything, I don't want Nuxt to replace TypeScript. I want TypeScript to do the TypeScripty bit, and then I want the types. I'm definitely taking a screenshot of this, Tom. So snap and saved. But yes, so in terms of the heavy lifting, like if we can write functions that work well, so in this case, H3, because it has this sort of idiomatic just return the response thing. So the idea of just being able to return an object rather than, res end JSON stringify. Because at that point, you've lost anything. JSON stringify returns any. You can't get a type from that. And it's the wrong way around as well. So we basically only can get types out of inputs and outputs. So like arguments in, maybe explicit generics and return types. And return types is by far the best user experience anyway. But it also means, as a side benefit, that that's fully. We have to make it a post request, but that's fully typeable because it's super simple for TypeScript to do. So anyway, I think I was very pleased when that PR landed.
Yeah, I wonder why most frameworks don't do this, because it seems like it's not a lot of code to do this.
I mean, I would love to see more frameworks do this. So I think Nuxt and Svelte, I think also have a slightly different approach, right? In terms of like a TypeScript plugin, which is able to so you can do things like just export const middleware, and then TypeScript knows that this middleware variable needs to be of a certain type. But that, as far as I'm concerned, is much more complicated because you have to have deep integration with TypeScript, whereas all we have to do is use the tools TypeScript is already given, like in the tsconfig, in the ambient context. So anyway, but it's a different, it's interesting. Per module types, that is very interesting. How do you integrate Zod with Nuxt? If you're wanting to do some integrations, you could do something like so if you had Zod, what you would need to do is type the unknowns, like validate the unknowns. So the unknowns would be something like, I'm fetching from some external API, and you typically wouldn't need to validate something else. Oh, by the way, have you noticed that Copilot is amazing for Zod? So I think it is just, it's like a killer feature of it. So this is what one of my implementation, exactly, Nate, that's exactly right. This is what one of the implementation, I built a tiny little API thing. So say you hit JSON, what is it? JSON typicode, what is it? Like, here we go. So you've got some API endpoint, and you hit hit one of those endpoints, like to-dos, and we would do something like this. Oh. Like this, and get back to do, and then you simply, this is what I do, I just paste it in, and then I do something like const to do is z.object, and then Copilot just fills everything out for me. It's amazing. I think it might be disabled in this environment, but basically, and this one isn't that complicated, but it's beautiful to see. In this case, I might have to do a little bit more work myself, but you know. And then you can basically, having done that, you can then validate like the response, so the unknown that comes in, and then you have type safety for the rest of your app. So you don't declare it here; it comes in unknown. You then say, to do is z dot is to do pass data. Something like that. And then you can just return it, which then means that you have the type safe access in your app, because at this point it's safe. Like, you don't need to, yes, you do get the type when you make the call on the client side. What do you mean? What do you mean, Carlos? This is the point, because you know what it's going to be on the server, so it passes through to the client. Show the body.
That was so good. Let's get this milk.
The request body. So that's true. That's something that I plan to implement before long. So basically, you should be able to do some kind of typing here. So I would really very much like, and I've built this. I just need to sort of make the PR. But basically, what we ought to be able to do is something like this. So you could then say, hey, I need an ID when you call me. And then you would then get typing here. And if you miss out the ID, it would be a type error. So that is a missing piece, which we definitely need to add. But yes, that's the idea. And that's all powered by this Nitro roots. And then like these are some auto imports that are available within Nitro, and this is there's some configuration that's available within Nitro. So we have something called app config, and so you can have various different pieces of configuration. So app config is sort of bundled in your app, so you would use it to maybe configure a UI library that you have or something, and you could say include default button, that kind of thing, and then a UI library might use that to do something different. But it's because it's sort of build time bundled. It's not like runtime config. It's a different kind. And so if you have something like that, that then gets typed for you as well. So all of this, when you're in your app.view, you can do things like use runtime config, and you get that test that we generated. And you can use app config, and again, you get like the default button thing that we just added in. And those types are actually smartly merged because you can also create like an app config file. You typically wouldn't do this. You wouldn't have it both in your Nuxt config and an app config file, but you might find that like a module or a library you do wants to expose some changes and they like to have their own types. So if we did something like, here we go, is one as 1 or 2, then we should now, I hope, have access to that. I'll give it a second. What's happened is we've generated this app config file. We've imported, oh, maybe it's not, where did I put it? app.config.ts should be right. Might be this HMR thing I've been facing, where we now have an imported, like we're importing that configuration, and then we actually have a utility function that merges things. So if you have one which is undefined, but then we actually provide a default, it's smart enough to remove the undefined because it knows that the default value is now provided. So we now are able to actually have the sort of that typed app config sort of smartly merged in with the config that we already had. I'm so sorry. I'm just diving into types because I'm pretty excited about them, but like I'm not sure how much this gives you in terms of the whole code base of
No,
Nuxt.
I'm understanding a lot from this.
So, like, but I mean, people are pointing out that there's stuff elsewhere because obviously Nuxt under the hood, we originally had another package here called Nitro, and Nitro was just one more package that we had that was the server engine component. But at some point, we decided to split that out into its own thing, and then we had like a different repo, Nuxt/Nitro. And then we decided actually to move it to its own organization. And actually, Sebastian created Unjs, like the organization name, Puya, but it was Puya's vision, and he picked it up and basically made it a thing. So now it has so many different packages, and I know people love those and rightly. Are you still there, Naxel? You just vanished. I don't know why. But come back. I'm guessing it's probably something to do with internet. Come back. It may be that now is a very, very good time to go for a 5-minute break and a cup of tea. Yes, this will be a let's take a 5-minute break to grab a cup of tea and to get Nexel reconnected. And see you all in a second. Sound good? Sound like you're still with me? Okay, good stuff. See you in a second. Okay, I think we are back. Give me 1 second to click a button. Yay! I think we're back. You there, Nexel?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so. Yes, I think it would be a great idea to have some more documentation on UnJS. One thing that we're already talking about is when we have our release notes, like when we create release notes for Nuxt versions, to actually include the changes that have happened in the UnJS ecosystem. Because often, an issue will come up and there'll be, a problem or a feature that we want to build. And actually we go and build it in these other libraries. And then almost the only implementation might be just upgrading some dependencies in Nuxt. But it's still it's important for people to understand. Welcome. But it's important for people to understand where that's coming from and what changes might have happened. And it's tricky to do it all sort of manually. So it may be that we add that to changelogin, which is our UnJS utility for automatically generating changelogs. And it already has some really, really, really nice features, I think. But that would be a killer one, I think, if we could sort of expose ecosystem changes.
Yeah, that would be great.
So so is there what else can I show you? What would be a good?
I'm interested in how the new server components work.
Oh yes, I am. Now they work differently from React server components. Hey Austin, welcome. They work differently from React server components, but this is I was actually wanting to do a stream or write an article about this. So this is honestly perfect. So basically, the first thing to get going is that they are experimental, and so we have this wonderful experimental option in our Nuxt config, which allows us to do things like merge really significant changes, not governed by Semver. So that's really what it is. And so we can enable them, and you enable them by enabling something called component islands. Now we already have a PR to make it possible to render server components on a different server from your app. So you can have multi-sort, you can have one app which renders server components and another app which consumes them, which is already working in the PR. So that will probably be in the next in a next patch. Because it's, we don't need to delay it to minor. So a server component is just like a normal component in Nuxt. So you have this components directory, which is where you keep reusable components that are auto-imported throughout your app. And we might have one called the footer, which is very common that you would have as a component like this in your app. And you might have, your sort of social links or something like that. And you might, even define your social links in an array, and they're going to have, values, and I don't know, link is going to be I don't know. There'll be stuff, and so you're writing this all in JavaScript, but actually nothing about this is reactive. It doesn't need to be in your client bundle. And maybe a better example would even be if you were doing syntax highlighting or something like that. But you don't need a syntax highlighter to live on the client. Once you highlight the syntax, it's done. So all you have to do to make this a server component. So we'll just normally I would do this with an unordered list, but just to say link in social links. And we're just going to say link name. So I mean, this is not a very impressive example because the actual JavaScript to produce this is minimal, but it's an example maybe of something that you don't need. So in your app, you have your footer, and where are we? So we have our footer, and it should be running in the browser, I hope. Yep. we've got footer running in the browser. Oh, this is just my personal snippet. So VS Code has a great configure user snippets, and so I've just configured some for my own use, which are this. They're super simple and really easy to sort of get going with. But if you are interested, Nuxt has some built in. So check out this extension. We haven't yet currently added this to the docs as a recommendation because it's not yet open sourced, but it is amazing. And I would recommend it. Try it out. So it does a lot of nice things. Like, for example, go into your Nuxt config here, and say you want to oh, it's not enabled. Enable. I think so. Say you're in your Nuxt config. Nuxt, come on, Nuxt. What's the matter? I'm not quite sure what that is. We can ignore that. Oh, it's probably because it's not a normal Nuxt project. Maybe it's because it's in the source repo for Nuxt itself. Let's see. Reload window. It's always a dangerous thing to do. High tariff. Because this is all, I'm connecting via SSH. So like when I reload the window, it sort of re-establishes the connection as well. Let's hope it's going to.
Where do you host like your virtual server?
Where do I host it? This one it's just on Microsoft Azure, just on one of their machines. I don't use it all the time, only when I'm streaming. And every time I create a new one. Yes. So it can do. So I think there are people who have already explored this, like before I've even had a chance to restart my server. But basically, it does lots of nice things. So it would let you, for example, I'm pretty sure in a moment it's going to pop up a little thing, because if it is in fact ready to go, then anyway, what does it do? So Nuxt, so it has user snippets. It also has things like you can like install a module, and it will update your Nuxt config and so on. It's not quite working at the moment in this environment, but it works for me locally, so I don't know what it is. Anyway, so we have a component island configuration. Everything is working fine at the moment. So again, if I were to open that browser, it's going to render the page, which again is not that beautiful. It's just got what? Open it. Oh, do I need to restart maybe because I reloaded my window? Oh, it seems it's fine. I'm not sure what the issue was. Oh, I always forget this. I have to proxy a port across in the SSH connection, but that should be fine. Yeah, so it's working fine. Now say I've got my app working and running and I don't have any server components. The only thing I need to do in order to make this thing a server component is to add a .server extension. So now that's a server component, and it should render fine. So I'm not sure what those errors are, probably because I've just restarted it. Let's reload the page. Oh dear. I very strongly suspect I just need to restart the server, but let's see. refresh. Yeah, there we go. So this HMR issue I need to look into. I think it's currently affecting Linux, so that's why I don't get it locally. So this is a server component, and this server component is up and running. We could make that even interactive. So in a server component, just like a normal component, you could define like a prop. So in this case, we'll put a number in, and we could say, you know, okay, so I don't know. I don't know exactly what the use case is here, but we'll give it a default of 0. Oh, like this. And that should now have to reload because it's server rendered, of course. And that's going to give me my value. But now we can actually pass props to it. So in my app, just as though it's a normal component, I will be able to pass count is like num notifications, and we'll make that 0 by default, and we can add a button which says num notifications plus plus. And what we should have now is an interactive server component that is actually responding to changes on the client side reactively. And so that's
How
going
does
to...
that work? Like, is it after server ending, does it hydrate on the client?
It does, but differently. So it hydrates as a single component, which is used for every server component. So a single server component, like a bit of code, which basically just renders the HTML, whatever it is. So it's responsible for taking the props, making a network request, getting the response, and rendering that HTML. But it doesn't hydrate it any more than that. Well, with one exception. So basically, like you'll see that what's happened is that all of these network requests have been made, which actually include the props in the request, and they hit this footer endpoint.
So every change makes a network request.
Yes. I think we deduplicate them. So if you're making lots of them at the same time, then we won't make lots of requests. But yes, that's right, because every change to the state, like to the inputs of the server component, require the server component to re-render. And the rendering of the server component is happening on the server and not on the client. So, but that's not suitable for lots of situations. So you might want to be able to have some slots that are rendered on the client. So you can do something like this. So maybe you have a slot called no, Nuxt works in a different way. So to be honest, my blog was pretty fast before. So it was 100, it was all the way across like top, and it still is. So it didn't make a huge difference, but yes, my blog entirely uses server components now. And I think what I'll do is like add a little button on the website so you can click it and see what is a server component. Because server components, one thing about them, the way we've built them is they can be pre-rendered. So you can pre-render a server component because we actually hash the props. So in production, every call to that server component is a separate file with a response. So you don't actually have to have a runtime server. You can have like fully static, but still have had server components in the build, which means then when you hydrate on the client side, nothing of that is. So exactly, you pre-render bits of it, and it prefetches them for you. So it's not a runtime request, it's already done, it's already there for you. So in this case, we could have something like, I don't know, this needs to be dynamic. So in this case, we could have something like const client count. Sorry, this is so boring, right? I guess this could be better. And we could have, I don't know, client count, and we could then have another button which is going to increase that. And I think I need to have a single root node for this.
So now this will just work on the client and send no network requests.
So this will, I think this might need to be a default slot. So yes, that's the idea. Now this is the most, I've not done much testing of this myself, so other than in the PR to actually make this possible. So let's just confirm that this, oh no, we have to render slots, right, in the component. Okay, we'll keep it as high, and then in our component, we will render the slot here. But maybe you could also, I don't know, like do it in a v4 or something. So in this case, we're going to say slot name is high. And let's reload that. Nope. What am I doing wrong here? Slot name is high. Template high. Let's just try a normal slot. I think it's fair to say we can make the error better. The issue is that what's coming back, there's an error that's not being handled. And so it's coming back with HTML error page rather than JSON, which is what we want for our server component. What am I doing wrong? Oh, we have to define slots, I guess. We'll define our slot, our high slot, and remind me, how do I define slots? I define them with a record, and I think it's just an empty object. No, what do I want? I have the slot, oh, and then it's a function. So it's basically, oops. And the function returns void? No, it probably needs to return a vnode. But why? This is more complicated than I think it should be. I'm so sorry about this. I just can't remember my basic Vue.js. Let's see, define slots. Oh yes, that's almost certain what I want. But I just want something I can copy and paste. Okay, yeah, there we go. We're going to say hi, and it doesn't have any props. That should be fine. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at the docs. Okay, so we have our high prop. We have, the one thing is I'm not 100% sure this is actually going to solve it, but I'm hoping it will. And if it doesn't work, then everyone's going to have compassion on me, and I will go look and figure out what's going wrong. Okay, let's see. So we have slot, and we still have an issue. Let me have a look at our actual test. What am I doing it differently? Nothing. This suggests that I don't need to define anything, I just need to render the slot, and I don't know why That's not working, which is a pain. Maybe. This is probably a bug. Well, I think it's certainly a bug. I need to figure out what's going on. But there's an issue here, and I think it's what could it be? So it's trying to read link. Do you mind if I dive into it? Like, it's probably quite boring. So the
No, it's fine.
what's happening is almost certainly we're trying to get a the response there. Let's see what the request we are making is. I'm just going to load like console log the URL so I can grab it and make a sort of request. Okay, so this is the that's what it is. So for some reason the query parameters are not being passed on the server render, I think. That is what I think. So basically we should be rendering this with our props too. That's the problem. So somehow the props are coming across on the client, but not on the server. So I see. Get slot props. So yeah, we should just be, with query. So actually the URL is a little bit different. Okay, so maybe that's not the issue. Let's log what the full URL is. Okay, the full URL is this beast. That is a bit better. And so when I hit that endpoint, I should get ideally a JSON response, but obviously I'm getting an error. And the error is something to do with Vite saying there's a string that's not terminated. Is that true? Don't think that's true. So it must be that there is a regex that is failing here. Sorry, everyone. This is probably not what you were expecting, Nexel. But anyway, this will show off the process of debugging in the code base. So okay, there's basically we do a transform for server components in order to, as part of the build, which basically what is it? Which basically transforms them. So let me see if I can find it. So I'm looking for our option because we enable the transform conditionally. And so if the option is enabled, then we have this islands transform function. And this islands transform function is clearly passing the AST and overwriting some things because in order how we are going to render our slot. So I very strongly think we're not terminating a string here, or we are replacing a slot that shouldn't be replaced. So the first thing I'm going to do is just log out the code, because we're only doing this on one server component, and it will be much easier for me just to see what that is. So I'll restart the server and I'll make a direct request to get the endpoint. Okay, so this is the code that's coming back, and for some reason it's displaying it all beautiful. So it looks like this. Let's just make it a little bit more readable by replacing all these new lines. And what is missing? Someone said, that's definitely not right. Okay. So basically, Daniel C. Rowe is somehow being... this is to do with our v4, because we have to do a special transform in order to make this thing work. But for some reason, it feels like maybe the index or something that we are overwriting is wrong. So we are, let's see, we have a location, we're writing start and end, and we think we've located a self-closing tag, I think. What have you just put in div style? So this is what we've written. And we're overwriting this, but that means we're walking our AST, and we have hit an element node. We think we're passing the template. That's what this is. Okay, so the issue here, I think, is we're passing the template, but the template index is not the same thing as the index of the code. So the code has everything, the whole single file component, but the template is less than that. So basically what we need is a template index. So what we want is wherever we say here, all of these changes, we need to add like the starting point. So basically const starting index is okay, we're matching that exactly. So we're going to say that length, and we need the actual template index, and that has to be it because it's defined. So then we basically add this here, 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 here. Okay. So, do I have any guesses as to whether you think I have solved this problem with this change? Who thinks this is the solution? Oh, we have to hit the end as well, right? So also here, here, here. The append should be fine. The overwrite has to be added as well. Okay, we should just merge this, right, directly. We don't need to test it, I think.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Let's see. It's unclear to me why this is working in Test Suite. Oh, we have a different error. That's definitely a success. Okay, let's see what's happened. So we now have some code, and it's unclear, but it looks like it's not the same error. So we've got, in fact, it looks fine. Like that is passed correctly. There don't seem to be any issues with like the rendered. It's a view single file component. It's replaced it in the right location. It's fine. We're going to ship my machine because I've got a cloud machine here. It's working fine. So I think that should be okay for everybody. So what is the error now? It's saying, I can't even read this error. Saying there's some kind of thing. This is ridiculous. Parse children, parse element. Struggling to parse the rendered I'm guessing this is not going to load any more than it did before. Yeah, so it's still having an issue, but a different one, thankfully. So oh, that's fine. Okay, so that's clearly not a successful change. Sorry, I'm going to have to do this one more time. Figure out what's going on. So we have our input. Unterminated string literal. Is that an accurate issue? No. We have a div. We have the end of our temp. Ah, yes. There's no closing div. So somehow this is wrongly. Again, it's another. Oh, thank you. Sometimes. Okay, so we maybe need to move away from regular expression, possibly. So we could probably work around it just for the purposes of this particular component by no. Let's try if we do that. Does that make a difference? Yes, I could do that. If it's doing this more than once, Nuxt can go diagonally to there. Let's see. Oh, I love debugging AST. The console logging that AST, it's great, isn't it? So that would definitely be some.
Programmers like really good at parsing ASTs and stuff because you can have an algebraic data type and you can like pattern match over it. So it makes it really easy to parse through like an expression.
Cool. Okay, that's like I get it. The it's going the other way. I'm going to end up taking a look at OCaml. I think this is working fine, by the way. I'm just refreshing. Hopefully this error page will close once this. Oh, you can't see the waiting for localhost thing. I'll move. There we go. That hides the 500 error. Come on, we're waiting. Come on, browser. Load the page. It's already responded in the console. So we've got a response. It's rendering stuff. Like this is the response that we're expecting. Hey, nice to see you. Are you able to call a component from the server even if so? Like within a server component, you can render any other component on your website without needing any kind of server-only stuff. It just should work. For goodness sake, I'm going to close this window and open a new one. Oops. Aha! There's something else going on. For goodness sake. Key is not defined. Now this could actually just be like in my code. not there. Could it be here? No, it could not. Key is not defined. Oh, that was something I was making. I was logging in Nuxt Island, I think. So I suspect I have done something here. I've deleted a line that defined key. Okay, delete you. Start that again. I think it might HMR. There we go. Okay, for goodness sake, that took too long. So, right, so we have a page loading, and we actually want to have some kind of, I'm so sorry about this, people. This is definitely like bleeding edge when we're talking about slots within server components. Okay, so, no, that wouldn't work for making a component a server component. But I think I know where you're getting that because I did make a comment about it. You can add a server component like this. So if you are building a module, for example, now you can do this in your local project. So you have a sort of modules directory and you can create like a test module, or any module, but this is just an example. And if you have a sort of basic Nuxt module, sorry, Nexel, I will move you around again. So if you're creating a basic Nuxt module, you can do things like add components to the project that is using it. So you have this add component function, which you can call, and you can add like a path to a file. So you could say if you had some component located here, and it doesn't have to be a .view file. It could also be like a .ts file. So in fact, here's an example. So you could do export default define component, and then this is just like a view component that renders a div with some text in it. And so if I'm adding this, resolver equals create resolver, import meta URL. If I'm resolving that path to be test, I'll also need to give it a name. We'll call it some component, and then I can add a mode. So I can basically say this is a server component here. Now Nuxt has supported like split components for a while, where you have a server component implementation, and then you have a client implementation, and so that's worked. As in, we've used one component on the server and a different one on the client, and so you could do that. But if you just make this mode server, that will add it as a server component. That's how you can do it with a mode programmatically. But we need to know what to do with that component when it's auto-imported. So a given component can only be server component or not. However, you can do, this is the cheeky thing, but you can do this. So you can have you could do this. You could have some other component that just exports it. So you could say export default from the footer like that. Now you have access to them both in the client and the server side. Thank you, Nuxt. But that's they work in both SSR and SSG. So my website, for example, is SSG, and it's got server components in it. So, which I think it's sort of perfect use case for it, because the point of the server component with an SSG site, you still have client-side JavaScript. You have JavaScript that sort of runs to hydrate and then sort of do things on the page. So my website, which is not a wonderful website and doesn't have a lot in it, but it basically, like for example, the blog. Like these articles do not, so this articles list is a server component. And then the articles themselves are server components. So like this doesn't need to be interactive. And I don't see any reason why the text needs to be in the JavaScript bundle, because this is not, well, to be fair, the cost is almost nil. Like the cost to the end user is very little, but at the same time, I prefer this to be in my like not in the client bundle. And so if I open the network tab and load this page, and I just filter by island. So what happens here is that it loads the page and becomes interactive, and then it prefetches the server components used by these additional pages. And so I have this server component called static markdown render, which is responsible for rendering HTML. It's based on a Nuxt content component called markdown render. And basically each of these pages has a unique hash corresponding to the prop that I'm passing, which is just the page root. And so this component has been statically rendered on Vercel. It's just an asset, and it's JSON, and it has this content. It has some inner HTML. There's a it has some inline styling. It has some HTML, and it also has a sort of state, because server components keep state. And they can actually apply that state to your application as well. It's not just on the server. So state can go back and forth. And so the server component can be pre-rendered like this. And so when I load this page, I have these links. The links are themselves within a server component, although I'm still using client-side navigation. Yes, prefetching is built in for Nuxt. I didn't have to do anything special to enable that. It just does that. If it's visible within the viewport, Nuxt will prefetch the content. So you don't. It's not that you need it. You don't think that it's very performant without SSG. So my site without SSG was also like at the same level on page speed, but it just feels to me like this is better conceptually in terms of where I store the HTML for this page. I don't need there to be any memory keeping track of it, other than as a string. No, the client isn't. The client is just sticking this HTML in here. Literally all of this is a server component. This bit isn't. The mentions is oh, sorry, you can't see it. Ooh, what have I done? The mentions at the bottom here is not. That is like client side rendered. So you'll see when the page loads, you won't see. It loads. Like it's a little loading speeder, and it's not. So that like it's about, I think, like what makes sense. And yeah, I don't want to be passing any AST to render this, but that's very specific to me. So there'll be some situations where you do have interactive components within here, but in my particular case, I thought I would sort of eat my own dog food and do server components to do that. So that means all of this, highlighted stuff, it's not happening on the client. Mind you, it wasn't anyway, because Nuxt content highlights it on the server anyway. So in a SSG site or in a server site, yes, if you change the props to the server component, it will hit the server again. So that the trick is to make the props significant. So in this case, the prop, I have my server component, which covers rendering this blog, and the prop is the path. So if I hit the path, it's going to render again, or it will return a pre-rendered response. And the fact is that I've pre-rendered all of my blogs, so it's always going to hit a pre-rendered response in terms of the actual response. But anyway, like if you're hearing the word server component and you're looking at React or any other framework, this is very, very different, like in terms of how it works. So the concept here is there's an interactive app, a Vue application, which is loaded in your browser. So you have Vue, you have reactivity, and then within that there are things which can be server components, and ideally within that there are things that can be interactive again, like deeper within. But The default is it's interactive on the outside, and we do that because I think that's a better default. So the like the runtime of Nuxt, like for my website, is 60 kilobytes. That is nothing compared to what a browser is able to deal with. Um, and the aim is to give people the tools that they can move things to be server or not, like as in not interactive, when they don't need them to be. So that means my blog will scale. My blog would have scaled anyway with Nuxt content without server components. But anyway, I foresee a future in which Nuxt content uses server components by default to do this, with little islands of interactivity where required.
It's kind of like similar to Astro now in a way.
Is it? You mean that with the islands of interactivity concept?
Yeah.
So like I've been doing a lot of talking, particularly and then debugging. But tell me, like, what do you think could be better?
And I think I'm really impressed by the architecture of the code base. Like it's super well organized and everything has like a clear purpose to it. I don't really have any suggestions.
So
Maybe there could be like better documentation around the internals, like the UnJS stuff, because I've seen like the docs for H3 and they're really like minimal, but I think it could use some more explanation
yeah,
for like how the internals work.
yeah, that sounds like a
Maybe
really
even
good
like
plan.
even like blog posts on like specific topics and specific features of like Nuxt and how they work could be useful.
Um, if anyone is implementing server components, I think the one caveat I would add is that because they're not hydrated by Vue, I mean they're hydrated but only as static HTML. These links are not won't behave like Nuxt links. So they will behave like normal A links, which means if you click them, they'll perform a hard reload. So in order to make that not happen, you need to write some code to do that. And it's not much, it's like 10 lines of code to make it sort of default to the client-side router. And I also added some code to prefetch, like to add prefetching, because again, they're not behaving like normal Nuxt links. So that is the only thing that I did. But I will write up a blog post about this with code examples to show how it works. If I don't open source my blog first, but yes. Okay, so I mean, I honestly, I would love Next. I would love if you wanted to dive in and do something in Nuxt, like make it better. Um, so this doesn't actually yet relate to the ticket for Nuxt content performance, because we're not using that. But the issue, I can explain what the issue was with Nuxt content, which I think is hopefully resolved by my PR. But no, Next, I would love you to dive in, and like I don't know, is what do you think is blocking, like for a new contributor who wants to fix something or like a debug an issue, like
I just think most of the issues for like a new contributor to like a huge project is just locating where the actual code that is relevant to them is.
yeah,
I think that becomes a really a big blocker, but once you find it, it's okay. And then there's the whole documentation thing. Like if the internal code hasn't been well documented, you're already like scared to just change something and break it.
yeah. Um, Here's a question for you. What's next?
What's
Um,
next? I think
so next year says, yeah, what's next on the horizon for you?
so. I'm starting college in August, going to a good university here in India, but most will be mostly focusing on like studies and stuff. But at the night, I'm gonna be contributing to open source stuff. And I'm also working on an app with a friend. It's a journal app. I don't think it'll be ready soon, but I'm working on it.
Cool.
Maybe it'll be launched soon.
That's extremely cool.
Yeah. I'm also like interested in internships and stuff. Like now, since I start college, I'm gonna have a lot of time in like the holidays. Maybe I can get like an internship and work in like a professional environment because I've never done that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's the future for me. I don't know if there'll be any coding jobs left when I graduate, so I'm also prepared for that.
The oh, cool. Someone here also nearly went to the same college as you. Um, I think there's always going to be coding. I think because the thing that's fun about this is the thinking, right? The thing that's fun about this is the
Right.
let's uh, figure out how to make a computer do the thing that I want to make it do. Um, and like, I just don't see that going away. Like the more intelligent, like the more intuitive a computer can get, the better in some ways, because then make you can make more amazing things. Um, I
Yeah,
think
I mean, there's always going to be like a human mind that should be controlling a computer, but seeing the progress that has been made in like past few years, like even like just in 1 year they progressed so much. I'm not sure of where we're going. Like it's definitely very open to debate.
for sure. I mean, it is incredible actually. Like the
Yeah, it's insane.
every day, every week, there's more amazing things that people are deploying, but with AI, and I mean, well, machine learning. Like it is very clever. It's very cool.
Yeah. So I think this is it. I have to go somewhere, but it
Great.
was really fun.
It has been so
I
much fun.
learned
I
a lot.
really appreciate you coming. It has genuinely been a delight. And sorry for getting a bit distracted in the middle and solving this issue.
No,
Um,
no, I learned a lot about like debugging in Nuxt because I suck at debugging.
so what you've learned is basically that I just console log everything. So that's the. I'm not sure that's a.
That's how I debug. I have never used a debugger, and it looks so complex to me that I never will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, very cool. Well, thank you for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it. It really was a lot of fun. Um, and yes,
Yeah.
this yeah, very cool.
Right.
So
See you
everyone
later. Thank you.
could say goodbye to Nuxel and go. I don't know if you ever stream, but everyone go follow Nuxel just so in case it ever happens on his own. I would always welcome here.
Yeah.
But
Maybe I'll stream sometimes, but I'm not sure.
okay,
Thank you. Bye.
bye. Okay, that was so much fun. That was really fun. Um, yeah, that was Nuxel. That was Nuxel. We are in the presence of a legend for sure. And yeah, so basically, I have a question. Do people want more? Should we do some stuff? Um, or do we feel like the need to just sit back and appreciate the more? More? Okay, we can do more. We can do more for sure. For a start, what I'm going to do is stick this up because even if this is a little bit, I wish there were a way in Magic String to tell it like the starting index. Maybe there is. And then you wouldn't need to. Yeah, I wish there was a way just to basically say, hey, we're only modifying this bit of a bigger string, because then it would do it by oh yes, shout out. There we go. Boom. That's what I wanted to do. I'm learning new things about Twitch every day. And so I appreciate that. But yes, everyone go follow Nuxel for sure. Let's see. Fix islands index. Okay, and hopefully we can just very, very quickly make a PL. And Nuxt CLI, we could actually have a look at that. Let me just confirm. Like an AST, which is that, yeah. Okay, good. So there's that. Okay, new Nuxt CLI. What to expect from it? So basically, the idea is that the idea is, on the one hand, boring. So the thing that's coming up right now is a significant re-architecture. So it makes it more extensible. It makes it better. We can build on top of it, but by default, it's not a profound change. So it's not like you're going to install it. If you installed it or used it today, it would be probably quite normal. So here it is. Here's the Edge version. So if I were to go to a temporary directory and I do something like Nuxt next generation, init new project. I'm not actually sure this will work because I'm using bunx. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. So we installed a new project. That's just what it's like at the moment. Yes, I do see that. I see Nuxt doing automatic migrations. Absolutely. Just in terms of, that's already what we're doing with things like Magic AST. So we can just install a new module from the DevTools of a project. So if we're doing that within like the I have projects running on Bun, by the way. Bun works as a package manager for Nuxt, incidentally. If you want to, here we go. So if I install my dependencies with Bun, obviously it's been a while since I've done this, so it's taking a little bit longer. But Bun is incredibly fast as a package manager. It is just beautiful. And it requires no configuration for Nuxt. It just works perfectly as a package manager. So we would do bun run dev, and up it's running. And basically, obviously that's going to be the disable animation. Oh, yeah, there we go. So bun run dev. I haven't tried this. So this is like with bun. So hitherto this is just package manager. Like it's just bun running the script. It's not bun the runtime. So I doubt this will work. I would be shocked if this worked. Yeah, no, it's not. It's basically we use a child process in Node in order to like fork a process that we can then restart ourselves if needed. So like from the runtime of Nuxt, if you have DevTools here, for example, we can actually, I'll start this over again. If we're running Nuxt and we have DevTools, you can actually install a package and restart Nuxt because we've forked the process that's running it into a different process. So if I were to open DevTools and where are my modules? And I were to add a new module like, say, Sanity. I need to open this URL. Done. And we'll install, say, Sanity. Install. So it's going to do this. It's going to make a change to the actual configuration file, and then it restarts it. Yeah, we should make the permission required better, for sure. But I'm very optimistic about Button. I mean, I think, as in, I like it. I'm glad that it's around, and I think the focus on speed is great. The bundler is interesting. Okay, so I think that's happened. Like if I would look at the terminal. Why has that happened? Oh, this has probably happened because I'm using bun, because it won't recognize the package manager. So there we go. We need to have an issue for DevTools to support bun as a package manager. That will be the issue. But yes, bun. It's great. Check it out. Okay, so we have got oh, for goodness sake. I bet there's some kind of snapshot that we need to fix. Huh. We'll have to check that out. Okay, so what's the next thing we should do? CLI. I should probably just clone this in here. Oh, is there anything that we were doing? I'll pick up the rest of the server component stuff later. And let's... Oh yes, well-brained, go for it. I haven't tried bun tests, by the way. And I know Node also has a new testing solution, but the bun tests, I'm so in love with vtest. It does what I want. It's super fast. It has a really great story. I'm not feeling pain, so I don't feel the need to go to the Node testing library. I don't feel the need to go to bun tests, but I certainly want to try it out. So your question is a good starting point to use Nuxt with the Pinia Nuxt module in combination with GraphQL Apollo. This feels like a complex question, is what it feels like, in all honesty. Okay, let's open CLI. Oh, don't want to save it. Apollo, it's huge. I think that's the thing that I just, it feels like it does it does a lot. That's right. So it does a huge amount in terms of caching and being able to perform queries locally. That's amazing. But I'm very rarely working in a project where that's an exceptional situation where you need that, I would say. So the initial CLI is rewritten using Kitty. So Kitty is this define Nuxt command here is using. Wait a second. Where are we? Why is this not using Kitty? I think it's just been rebased by Puya, so maybe it's missing the Kitty integration. But yes, Kitty is pretty cool. But yes, clearly we need to. I'm very confused. I think it must be the fact that it's just been rebased and pushed. But yes, this is the replacement. So it still has the same sort of each file per command, but it will be versioned separately, which means we can release updates to the Nuxt CLI without needing to update the whole of Nuxt. And I think that will move quickly. Yes, everybody, pay attention to Drew. Like there are a couple of GraphQL modules out there for Nuxt 3, but if you want to pick up that, Drew is amazing. He's genuinely sticking these issues out. I'm trying not to pick them up, everyone, because a nice issue with a bounty like that, I don't know, I wouldn't want to rob anyone else. Have a look. It's definitely worth adopting it. No, I would use Nuxt vtest. That is what I would use. That is what I will. We're going to use it in Nuxt itself to test our own composables and probably make it part of core in terms of exposing those utilities from Nuxt test utils itself. Now, actually, I don't know if anyone knows the GraphQL client that I'm talking about, but there was a GraphQL client that basically generated the queries at build time. So what you would do is you would check out the, like you would just use the object, and via a proxy at build time, it would generate the query to get the data you needed. And I can't remember what it was called. It was called something else. It was, actually, I have an idea about where to find it. It wasn't Relay. It was, I think, John Papa. I was on let's see. I think I recommended it to somebody on a podcast, and therefore I think that's probably the best way to find it. That might be it. Let me see. Is there one here? I think this is it. Yes. I think this is it. Like, this is very cool. So basically you just execute now this has come on considerably since I saw it, and I'm pretty sure it didn't have this name. I think it must have been renamed at some point in the past. But this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of, like this is, so like you're not writing a query. What you're doing is you are using a query, like using an object. Tell me that's not incredible, right? But it feels like this should be usable in Vue as well. That's probably something that, okay, they have a core, but they also have a React integration. So it may be that we can add some Vue implementation. I'm just going to make a little note of that and absolutely see if we can do something fun with that. By the way, the reason I was asking about things to implement, so I haven't made a decision yet as to what we do next, because there are some people already building some of those integrations, which is I will check it out. I've seen it, like I've seen it. I think actually there's someone on my current. Who did I see? I was diving into this the other day. Oh, it has an integration for Nuxt. Is that how I came across it? Where is it? There we go. Nuxt. Beautiful. Ah, that looks nice. But yes, no, I have seen this. Who is it? Who is maintaining their project? I think maybe someone on my on the GitHub Accelerators program. That's what I feel. But I'm not sure. Well, it's about where you locate the complexity, I think. But yes, it is. It is. I certainly think that some of the solutions about giving type safety in other ways, like gRPC or even Nuxt server routes, do address some of the use cases for GraphQL that previously, or the need for GraphQL. So previously people were thinking, I have to have GraphQL in order to have this type safe access to APIs. But that's just not the case. I'm not sure it was the case then, and it's definitely not the case now. But there's still use cases for it. How I would handle GraphQL's files for testing. That's an interesting thing. That would be a very easy integration to make. The stream, I'll just confirm with Nexel that he's happy for it to go live before I publish it. But yeah, otherwise it will be saved and visible for people if you want to rewatch it. Oh, why isn't that working in Nuxt vtest then? Because Nuxt vtest will run your code with the same transform pipeline that Nuxt does in production, or like in build. So you should be able to import GraphQL in your test files if you can import them in your Nuxt files. But I may not be understanding the situation. Come on. I want to find out what's going on with this failing CI. Maybe I have to default it to 0. So maybe that's what I have to do. Great. Okay, so we're getting an error, which is good. So let's see what the problem is. This is terrible what I'm about to do, but I want to transform that into a string that I can copy. So document maybe? That's strange. Maybe there's no... What stream is that? Oh, just the one with Nexel. Oh, for goodness sake. Okay, this is a ridiculous solution. Okay, so hopefully I now have a copied, pasted version of this thing. Okay, so what's the problem? We say something to do with the attribute at line 11. Okay, that's definitely wrong. So, okay, so I see what's going on again. So it's inserting these things in the wrong place. So starting index, let's try that. And let's try that again. This is all very nice of you to say. Somehow the location here isn't right. So I think we need to change this a little bit more, in fact, because there's no guarantee that an island is going to be a view component. Oh, no, this only needs to transform a view component, I guess. So we should exclude non-view components. So if not is view ID, return false. We also then, when we are transforming it, want to make sure we have our starting index. So, and then let's just have a little look at what we're doing at this point. So maybe there's something that we're not hitting. Okay, so the thing that we've added is the slot again. And so this is really too late. So what I'm doing here is debugging an issue with a transform of a view single file component. So we're basically adding in some things which are not entirely working correctly. So currently it's producing this, where basically this thing that's been inserted has been, it's replaced something that shouldn't be replaced. So it's replaced that instead of that. So it's like it's a whole line off, which feels like maybe it's to do with this template length. Maybe that is the issue. So what is walking coming from? Oh, it's coming from Ultra HTML. So this is the issue. I caused it. So let's try that now. Yeah, there we go. Hey, welcome. Okay, so what we're looking at, so yeah, TypeScript is definitely, TypeScript will help you until you know where you're going. And really, I mean, I would just have fun in terms of playing around, because I mean, I think they say that people learn through play, like kids learn through play. You learn so much about the world by having fun. And if you have fun with coding, then you will learn so much more. And also your quality of life will be so much better in terms of your experience. It's not a chore or something to sort of have to work painfully at. It can be something that you work enjoyably at because you're having fun when you're doing it. Would be my advice. Yeah. Yeah, and so much is I would really say think you don't need, like, a lot of things you might think that you need as an essential thing are not essential. They are nice to have. So much you can learn on the job. Like when you're confronted with a challenge, that is a very good impetus to learn something. I mean, be upfront with people. Like, I don't know this yet, but I can learn it. And I think. That is a lot of fun to learn something new, because you need to figure out how to do it. It's a great exercise. So, really, how did you discover that, Drew? What was the use case? Let me see. Now that we fixed this transform, I bet our server is going to be a little bit better. Oh, that should be within a runtime directory. it is amazing. Just being able to press F2, renaming a function, and everywhere else it changes, or a type interface or something like that. It's very hard to go back. Okay, so we're rendering at last. Okay, this is good. So now we have our app.view. What? Thank you. That's really nice. Okay, that's our server component. This is our default slot. And we should have the footer. And we should have a default slot there. There we go. Okay, so now we have an interactive client. There we go. At last, the slot's working. So here's the interactive client bit that's not resulting in any change. This is re-rendering the server component around the client slot. Tell me that's not fun. You can come back anytime, I will tell you. You can say anything you want about my voice. I will be okay with that. Okay, so yeah, there we go. Beautiful. I'm sorry it took so long. It looks like there's definitely some caveats in terms of the islands transform that we're doing, and I think we can improve that slightly. So for example, this search, I think we can make that better. So has slot, RE is going to, I think we can make it an RE for a start, and it can be basically slot space. Actually, I think maybe just a boundary would be enough. Hey, welcome. A boundary should be fine. Or basically it needs to be a space or a // I think. I think that's the test. So I am glad to hear it, Steve. I'm glad to hear it. I was talking with a team today about a utility called Nuxt Doctor that we plan to make to that will basically be a utility you can run in a Nuxt project, and it will tell you where you can change things. So if you have a module that is not compatible with Nuxt 3, it can tell you that. And if it is like if you have a plugin that doesn't need to be in your Nuxt config but is there, or you have options that are set that are in the wrong place, hopefully it can do some of that, and also can migrate some of your stuff. So if you are looking at migrating a big project, please let me know, because I would love something to test it out on. That could be a useful thing for me to have just something I can run the utility against. So running magic regex. So basically so I don't use it in the Nuxt codebase. Actually, I probably could use it in the Nuxt codebase, but I don't use it in the Nuxt codebase deliberately. Because when I first built magic regex, I wasn't needing Nuxt, so I didn't. And in general, I wouldn't just submit PRs to use my own stuff in Nuxt. I think I would want other people to buy into that first. Do you know what I mean? It's not just me. There's a whole community of people on this. But maybe I should submit it. Let's see. Because regex are a source of bugs, totally, all the time. So these a very easy performance improvement is simply to hoist a regular expression out of a function, because you're effectively instantiating it, and if it's the same thing every time, you don't need to reinstantiate it. The only thing that you need to watch out for is global regular expressions need to be you need to be very careful when you're doing .match on them because they have state. They retain the context, which means if you're running it on different things, you can end up not matching because the index of the previous match is where it starts from when it. So you can have weird bugs that are very difficult to reproduce. Yeah, still. Oh, but I have not saved it. What I really want is to see if the CI is passing. The GitHub Action VS Code extension. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Okay. Okay, it started. I wonder if it was waiting for dependency review or something like that before running the tests. I wouldn't be surprised if, let's see if there's a but for whatever reason it is running, and I'm also expecting that it will pass. So I'm expecting this will be fine. I think the reason the CI was passing before was that for our server components we always had the template as first in the file, and so therefore it did work fine because the index is always correct. Whereas if you don't, then it won't work. So I think all we need to do to test this is ensure that at least one of these server-only components has the script first, and then it's a sort of, we won't have the same regression again. So we can basically Nuxt preview mode, by the way. Drew, I don't know if you had a chance to test the PR that's been opened, but there actually is a PR now for preview mode. So it needs feedback. So we're not going to release it until the next major, so we've got about a month. But there is a preview mode. In fact, it's where is it? Yeah. It looked like a good, there's stuff to look at. I'm sure I haven't reviewed it properly, so I'm not commenting on. But it looks good. It looks very promising. So have a look, try it out. I triggered a release, so you can actually go ahead and install the version of Nuxt that is in that branch with that resolution. Now that actually doesn't include the latest fixes to main, but it will be sufficient to test the preview mode, I think. So yeah, try it out. Right, there was one more change I was going to make to the tests. Great. Oh, the theme is called Tomorrow. No, it's called Pale Night Operator. I have got some links to things here. I wonder if someone's found a solution to this. Thank you, Lucy. Oh, yes. Ooh. Yay! Nuxt. I love it. That is hilarious. That's fantastic. And oh yes, I must not forget clicking on this link. I did not know that there was an official GitHub Actions extension. That seems like a really, really useful thing. How long has this been around? 2020. No, you can order them however you want. But there is a new preference for script first in the Vue documentation, like in the style guide. So it's now sort of script template style, but it is totally a personal preference thing. There is no reason you should not do it whatever way you want. Unnecessary escape character. Cool. Okay, what should we do? Otherwise, see. Anyone have a bug you want me to tackle? Got a couple of minutes, I think. The thing about making GitHub Actions easier to debug is it will be better for GitHub as well. Like, people having to run actions over and over again in order to debug them is a bad thing for compute. Like, it would be far better if people could test them locally or get better sort of interactivity with them. But there's a very cool utility produced by Alex, which I tested. I didn't want to pay for it because I don't do this that often. But it's a very good util by Alex Ellis, which is let's see, which is, where's the example? Yeah, this. Basically, you can add a line in your workflow, which means that you can then SSH into the GitHub action and like run code in it. So this is like me live, like I just recorded a small session. This is real time. And it basically runs an SSH agent, and you can then connect to it in your terminal. And that is a very, very, very useful thing. So check it out if you're interested. I think you have to, I'll share the link. I think he posts a response telling you how you can do it yourself, but I think you have to contact him or subscribe or something. So there's a cost, but like that is amazing. I'm in the action. I can actually do stuff there. That is a very useful thing if you're wanting to see like what, because often I want to know, what's the payload of the event that I have access to, what binaries are available, like what anyway, this is very helpful for that. So definitely check it out. Right, what were we doing? We were looking at some bug. A module for loaders and actions. Oh, by Heb. Let's see. I think if you are finding issues with something that doesn't work in a worker environment, that is a use case for building a library. So Uncrypto exists, for example, for this very purpose, to allow sort of consistent access to various kinds of an API for cryptography, because it is such a pain. And I think we need to add a utility for JWTs. In fact, I'll just add a mention here. The guy working on Tom is generally quite quick, and Laygun is amazing. Definitely take a look. I think it's great. So yeah, I did study. I did become a priest. So I am one, believe it or not. There you go. Not that, but that's not what I do. But bugs. I am. I also studied law and graduated with a degree in law. So plugins that make sense in Nuxt 3. It depends what you mean. So here's an example of a plugin that doesn't make sense. So the day.js module in Nuxt 2 works like, so day.js is a library. And in Nuxt 2, we had a library that injected like day.js globally so that you could use it everywhere in your app through $day.js. So here you are, you're configuring it up, and then you have access to this $day.js in your utilities. The thing is that this feature, which is great for Nuxt 2, really is not needed in Nuxt 3, because what you need to do is add an auto import for day.js utilities in your app, and you're done. So it's sort of built into Nuxt. So like migrating this, I don't know if someone tried to migrate it. Yes, someone did. So we should probably act on that. But migrating it should also involve re-architecting it, because this module, it sort of has some default options, which is great. That's very straightforward. This is, by the way, not at all a criticism. It's more a sort of architecture thing for Nuxt 3. And then the way this works is that it injects day.js, which is literally just the import from day.js. So we can auto import that. Everything else, that sort of the importing of the locales, this is all probably quite useful to do from a module point of view, but the exposing it this way probably isn't, because this also means you cannot tree shake it. Now, it's possible you can't tree shake day.js, that's possible. But I wouldn't advise you inject it this way. I would advise instead like a composable you call with use day.js or something. Because ideally, if it's not used, you don't want it being added to the build, like to your runtime bundle. And this will result in it 100% being added, all of day.js, always. Client-side plugins make perfect sense. So like if you do need a global singleton, then plugins make sense for injecting a global singleton. Like auth is very common. Chat widgets, like if you need to call something and make a pop-up happen, that's fine. So there's lots of good use cases for them too. But basically but like if you don't actually need a global singleton, then you don't need it. So file-based routing from middleware. So we are currently planning to add root groups. And yes, that would be very doable within that. As part of that, that would be why we would want to add root groups. But basically, at the moment, you can do it with a slight hack. So this is how you would add a middleware to everything in a directory. So let's just discard all these files and show what you could do. So imagine you had a pages index file, and you also had like an admin directory, and it had index, and it maybe had something else, and you want to apply like a middleware to everything here. So here's your app, and you've got your index page now, and you can manually add it yourself. Define page meta middleware thing, like some middleware, right? So that was fine, and you have to add it in each file. But here's the hack. If you want to apply it to every page in a directory, you can create a page with the same name as the directory, and basically have that page meta there, like this, and then have the content of the template just be Nuxt page. And what it will do is it will render the page it would normally render, but it would apply the page meta to everything. So that is how you do it right now. So it under the hood, it does it by creating a nested route. So effectively, so we would want just to show that it's working. Let's create an app. We're going to inject our Nuxt page, and we're going to add a link to admin and to admin else and back home. Okay, and we want our middleware, and we want something called else, and it's going to need to just do a console log navigating to path, and that should load us up an app. Oh, sorry, what am I doing? Okay, so come on. Yes, it is possible to do that. So they're totally separate. But I mean, there's a benefit to having them because it means it can be lazily imported based on usage. So if someone hits an endpoint, the code for that is normally bundle split and only loaded when it's required. But you could do that. One way of making that happen is in your Nuxt config, you have access to this. You have a handlers property, and in your handlers you can create handlers, which is the path and the route. So you could say something like some route, and then the handler is in like server custom routes, whatever. So you can like have full control this way. That would be a good way of doing it. And then you keep the lazy bundle splitting benefit. But you can also have very custom paths and routes that are whatever you want. And if needed, you can also do that. Yeah, totally fine. But if you do that, if you want to reuse the same page template, do it like this instead. Do it with an alias. And that way it's sort of co-located. You don't have to. Oh, anyway, so for goodness sake, for some reason. Okay, so here we are, we have our console, nothing's being logged here, we're home, hit admin else. Why isn't that loading? Oh, do I need to expose the port again? What's the matter? Oh, the middleware didn't exist. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so admin else hitting the middleware, admin hitting the middleware. So it's all working as we expect. And back home again. There we go. Great. Well, I think I'm going to call it a day for the stream. It's been fun. Nuxt was a real highlight, and I enjoyed showing things around a little bit. Let me know if there's anything else that would be good to cover. I have got a couple of ideas for some interesting things to build. So I will be back, and hopefully we can build some amazing stuff together. Otherwise, thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure as always.